really, really disheartening. I can really go through more of your questions, I think, is probably the best way for us to engage this evening. I know that there was some questions about what the Democratic Party response is. I can talk to you from the perspective of the DCCC, which is the not federal, but the Democratic institution that I'm most engaged with. That's the organization among members of the Democrats who are in the House who are trying to regain seats in the House. And we have been identifying candidates across this nation in what we consider to be flippable seats to run and support to take back the House. We believe, as I'm sure many Americans do, that having all three, the House, the Senate, and the White House in the hands of the Republicans is a recipe for disaster. We would have felt that way anyway, but it's become extremely stark to everyone that we're dealing with some unreasonable people, to put it lightly. So I'm going to really open up, if you will, to some questions that folks would have, because I think that's probably the best way to engage.
In your recent article in the New York Times about the conflict between grassroots attempting to attack all of the seats and the central committee attempting to only go after what they consider flippable seats, could you comment on that?
Sure, I think that's more of, so there are two schools of thought, and I think it's more towards the DNC than it is the DCCC. The Democratic National Committee has recently come under criticism for focusing on what they believe will be the seats that are most in play in the next election. And many of us, and I would put myself in this camp, believe that it's important that we again reestablish a 50-state strategy for the Democratic Party. And I say that because I believe that we have to start at the municipal level, at the state level. We have to have a wide view to how we strengthen and build the Democratic Party. I think focusing on Congress is a mistake. We know that the 50-state strategy was working, and we departed from that and have been in a losing position for quite some time. Particularly with us going into the year 2020, it's going to be important that we really build from the ground up in order to make sure that our state houses who draw the lines are in a position where we can have Democrats playing a substantive role in doing that.
Is this issue still an undecided in flux, or has it pretty much been decided?
I don't think it's been decided. Quite frankly, I believe that from the Democratic National Committee perspective, they're still in reorganizing mode. They have not settled in any way, shape, or form, and they're hearing from DNC members, they're hearing from members of Congress that aren't DNC members, that I'm not a member of the DNC. What we know will work on the ground, what the energy in communities across this nation are saying to us, and it's that we have to really be on the ground where people are. I wouldn't say rebranding, but I would say rebranding who we are as a Democratic Party and really getting the buy-in of Democrats across this nation, because I think we lost some credibility with the number of voters in the last election, and it's not necessarily all about the issues, but how we organize ourselves and who we take for granted and things of that nature. I did want to stop a minute and acknowledge Assemblyman Walter Mosley, and I did see Council Member Lori Cumbo and company
Yes.
in the room.
Any other questions?
Yes.
You mentioned that you have people in power who are deconstructing the government, and I think we are really looking at the the highlights every night and seeing, you know, what President Trump is doing, tweeting, whatever, or not doing or not tweeting. And how can we as citizens really kind of keep our eye on the ball? Because we're constantly really kind of bombarded with maybe the very, you know, the top items. But behind the scenes, you have privacy on the internet that's disappeared. You might have other things that are happening in the middle of the night or when nobody's really focusing on it.
Absolutely.
So how can we really kind of really keep that,
Well,
you know?
I try to use my office as a portal of information to folks as soon as we get the information, because believe it or not, Democrats aren't even getting the information until the last minute. We don't know what bills look like because they're cooked up in a room and then pushed to the floor. Regular order has gone out. You know that the last version of the Affordable Health Care Act as Trump Care never went to our committee for a hearing. Never brought in witnesses to talk to the validity, or a debate was never held about the virtue of that particular piece of legislation. We had the first iteration where they tried to wear us down with the 20-hour markup and sleep deprivation. You should know that during that markup, Democrats offered multiple amendments. That's why we spent 20 hours, none of which were accepted by Republicans. And so when people ask, well, are you guys talking to each other? Are you reaching out to each other? What is the bipartisan nature? There is none. We're dealing with a lot of bullying on Capitol Hill, and the last iteration, they didn't even bother to bring back to committee at all. They brought it straight to the floor, which is not regular order. So, I mean, things are really topsy-turvy in Washington, D.C. right now. The normal processes that we go through that ultimately bring together legislation where you will get a majority of members to say, okay, we can agree with this because there was give and take, there was a real debate. That's not even happening right now. So, you know, it's challenging. I wish I could tell you, you know, that we'll send up a smoke signal. We ask everyone to basically, you know, stay in tune. My office, I have a hashtag resist, and oftentimes I'm tweeting under that hashtag so that people know here's what's happening on Capitol Hill. You know, tweet back when you see a 45 tweet back. I mean, they need to know that we are engaged. And the hope is that, yeah, that we'll get exhausted, they'll wear us down, that this will blow over. But if indeed we're gonna move with momentum and unity into these upcoming midterm elections, we can't get tired right now. And I'm assuming that that's part of the strategy, is to confound us with the stupidity and crazy madness that's going on, so that we'll just give up. But it's you can imagine being on the Hill and just seeing what's happening unilaterally through executive orders and what the courts have had to do to step in. It's been quite amazing, quite amazing.
Did you have time for?
Oh, sure, yes, definitely.
In the back.
Congresswoman Clarke, I have a much more pragmatic question. My name is Anu Heda. I'm with the Dean Street Block Association. The United States Postal Service recently moved in a sorting facility onto our block. And I think you might be uniquely qualified and empowered to help us, as that sorting facility that had a very negative impact on the quality of life for the 2 blocks that surround it. I'd like to ask how